the Snipe class Commodore. I'm very happy that Luis is here explaining us how to manage the time that we have for racing, not for sailing or for cruising, because that is a big difference, right, Luis? Between,
yes,
yeah. So Luis is the Commodore, but he's also a very good sailor. I think you won 9 nationals, Argentinian national, right? Or 10, I don't remember.
9, yeah.
9. 2 South Americans, and you were many times in the top 5 at the Western Hemisphere and also at the Worlds. I remember, for me, you sailed very well in Talamone. I know that, of course, you were very disappointed because you finished second in Talamone in 2015, but you sailed very well, and so I have to say congratulations again
Thank
for
you.
that regatta,
Thank
but
you.
also for other regatta that you did. You sailed many times in Italy, and I remember also many times in the US at the Dunk in the midwinters and so on. So a lot of experience. So I will give the microphone to Luis for starting his presentation. Thank you, Luis.
Thank you, Pietro, for the kind introduction. Okay, so this is a short talk about sharing my own experience regarding 2 big issues relating to racing. One of the issues is the age. I'm not getting any young. I'm 50 years old, and that is not helping in the physical condition for sailing. And the other, which is much more important, is that I'm living 1,000 kilometers from my boat. I need to take a plane in order to sail. And if you add to this the pandemic situation, well, the result is that last year I sailed, in 2020, I sailed only 2 days. And in 2021, I already sailed 4 days. But if you go to the last year, pre-pandemic 2019, I only raced 4 regattas. So I'm not able to sail a lot since 10, 11 years ago when I moved. I'm from Argentina, by the way. I was raised in Buenos Aires, which is near the river, and I sailed all my life there. But in 2011, I moved to Mendoza, which is in the mountains. So I'm, like I say, 1,000 kilometers from the water. So at that moment, that had a big impact in my sailing, or at least I thought it would have. And I tried to think, how can I compensate that? One thing that must be very clear is that, because this is the second talk I do of this subject, and after the first one, I have several emails saying that, or they understood that I'm saying that it's not important to sail often. No, it's not that. The physical training for sailing or for any other sports is fundamental and is very good and is needed, and everyone will exercise themselves as much as they can, or like in my case, as much as they will. Regarding the sailing, you will sail as much as you can or you want to, but what I'm talking about is another different thing. It's about exploiting a big part of the racing activity that is often taken for granted, that is the preparation and the strategical and tactical conditions of yourself looking for a race. So what I did is, I will share a presentation in a few minutes, but what I did, I'm a civil engineer, so I try to understand and write down what I can do, what I cannot do anymore, what I can do very good, as good as anybody else, but the difference will be in what I can do better than others. not because I'm smarter or anything, but only because I will care more about it, because I will have more time, because if I'm not sailing, I'm able to do something else. So this in one part. And the other part, regarding my setup, regarding the boats, it changed a lot, because to be honest, 10, 13 years ago, I had a very, very polished setup. My sailing was very good at that moment. I was trained in the previous years. In 2010, I sailed like more than 100 days in a year. So I was able to use setups that were more critical. And I realized with this thing about not sailing that my setups will have to be more standard in order to sail, to be fast, and not to be as the setup not to be as demanding as other setups are, because I just wasn't trained enough. And this takes me to the part where I advise everyone that constantly demands for setup, try to be smart in what kind of setup you copy, okay? You cannot copy the setup of the world champion if you don't sail like the world champion. That's not going to work out very well. And you cannot take the setup of a guy that hikes from the Higgins strap like a crazy and he's an athlete, because you are not able to do that, okay? You will not be able to hike as hard as he does. So most probably his setup is full of power, and he needs that hiking to develop the full power of the setup. And if you don't have that hiking power, you will not be able to do that. And also, copying the setup from a guy that sails all the time, if you are not able to sail all the time, has no point either, because you are not going to be able to sail the same way they sail in order to use their setup. You know what I mean? So what I'm proposing since a few years ago, when I started with these courses online, I propose the setup I use. I don't hike much, because I hike all I can, but I'm a little older, and I don't do a very, very intensive physical training. I don't. So, and as I said, I don't sail much. So my setup is aimed, and in addition, I rent boats. I used to travel a lot, at least, and I'm most of the time, more than half of my sailing is with rental boats. So I don't get to use that boat much to develop or to get used to the boat. So what I do, the first thing I learned, and it worked very good for me in the last years, was to develop a very standard setup, a very flexible one, not much tension in the rig, not much limit things like the spreaders in the limit length, long or short, whatever, nothing the limit, everything pretty much standard. And I tend to not touch the setup much, okay? So I really think that the Snipe is a boat that allows you to sail fast enough if you have a logic setup, and you just keep looking your sails and trimming your sails and making the best you can with that. It will not be the best setup in the world, but you will not be slow for that. You will be sometimes in some condition maybe a little slower, or maybe you will point a little less, but this is because the other guys has a much more developed setup and they sail more, okay? If you don't sail more, you cannot copy setup. For example, I always give this example. Brazilian sailors are the best in the world in our class, and they don't used to clamp clit the sheets when they're sailing. You know, the crew is having the jib in the hand, and also the main, the skipper. So, okay, so myself, I carry the main in my hand, but my crew goes with the jib sheeted. Of course, when there is a wave or something, he releases a little jib, but not all the time. Brazilian guys are moving that all the time. So if you are not able to do that, you cannot use their setup, because their setup, the whole point in their setup is around moving the sails all the time. So this is an example of why that setup is not working much. So so I will show you my presentation. We will be talking with the presentation, but first of all, I will try to this I will not do with presentation. I will just comment about this. Usually, people ask me why I'm still competitive, being old and not being able to sail. This second part is the most important part, because many people in the class is old, around 50, 60. You got guys like Ogi Diaz, who's older than myself, and he sails almost perfect, and great sailors like Ernesto Rodriguez, Damián Borrás, and I don't want to give names because there are so many who sail very well, and they also sail a lot. So what I'm proposing is a compensation system if you don't get to sail a lot. Okay, so when people ask me why I'm still competitive, if I'm old, I have less training or lack of training, I used to answer to that I feel that I'm more competitive than in the past, not less, because I'm exploiting other stuff. Okay, my sailing had an impact with age, and especially without not be able to train. For example, if I need to jibe a reach mark in 20 knots, I have no confidence left whatsoever at this moment. So most probably I will take my pole out and jibe, while a few years ago I will for sure make the jibe with the pole. So this is not being coward in my view. This is just being smart. I'm not trained enough to jibe in a reach mark with 20 knots. So I don't want to lose the race. So I just make the best maneuver I can do. So I feel I'm more competitive because with the years and also with the calm of being like a little outside of the sport, I feel I have more knowledge, more experience, even more time to do some things, to prepare things. Also maybe more media, my economic media to attend to the regattas is not the same now that I'm 50 comparing to when I was in my 20s. In my 20s, I used to attend to my racing. My equipment was the best equipment I could buy, but probably will not be the best. With lucky, will be average. I sail with used sails, from buying used sails from my competition, like many decades. So now I can maybe have the equipment I want. So, but the best part, I think, the most important part, I think it helps me in this moment of my life, is to manage better the stressful situations. And this kind of thing probably is one of the that is most overlooked, and people pay less attention. And for me, is the most important of our sailing. So regarding the physical part, we need to understand that our sport is physical and also is intellectual, okay? It's both. And sometimes it is very physical when it's windy, but all the time is intellectual. And the difference between one and the other is that the physical part, you need to train that. When I mean physical and also the technical part, you need to train that. But the intellectual part of a sport, the strategical, the tactical part, you learn it. So that you can learn in your house, reading a book, making this you're doing now, or any other way you find to learn about tactics and strategy and prepare your racing. So this is our sport, and when you take that to our class, this is a focus in snipe class. You need to understand. I will share now a little of the presentation. Allow me a few seconds. Okay, I'm sharing now. I hope you can see now the presentation.
Yes, we can see. We can see Louis.
Okay, thank you. So this is our win. Okay, this is our class, SCIRA win. Okay, so we don't race below this, and we don't race above 23 usually. So in this range of win, which 50% is under 14 and the other 50% is above 14, we will have to use the brains all around from 0 to top win. But your physical part, here is in Spanish, the presentation is in Spanish, so we can help the guys that attend here in Spanish. But the legs, the physical part, will be just very demanding just in the upper part, in the 17 to 23 knots. In the 14 to 17 will be demanding also, but this will allow 2 moments of relaxing, and it will be not that hard. But above 17, probably we will have a reaching. So if it's really windy, above 19 or 20, probably we will be hiking also in the ridge. So we will have no relief in that race. So the physical part will be a problem only in one part of the SCIRA win. So you can see in here that we cannot justify our lack for being able to compete in a good level to our age, because that age involves only a small part of our racing. Okay, so I try to see, and I insist a lot in this pyramid. I call the pyramid of the race. In my view, according the race is developing, every stage of the race, from the pre-race, the starting, the first upwind, the first downwind, each part of the race is less important than the previous part. This is very easy to see. In the early race, boats are more close together, and a good decision will take you much more to the front of the race, and a bad decision, you will lose a lot more positions that if it happens in the first upwind, comparing that if it's happening in the third upwind. So you need to understand that most of your racing will be over in the first windward mark. Okay, this is my view. Of course, this is absolutely personal, but I think that my racing is decided always in my first windward mark. I don't remember the race when I rounded well the first windward mark and I finished bad, and I don't remember also a race when I had a very, very bad windward mark and I won the race. So of course there is exceptions for everything, and sometimes it happened to me that I was so bad in the back and I took a crazy tack to one side, and I was very lucky and probably I won the race, but this has absolutely no value. This was a luck hit, and it has no sportive value whatsoever. So if you want to be consistent and have good regatta results, you need good results race after race, and most of all, you can have a bad race, but you cannot have a disaster. We will talk about this in a few minutes. So this is regarding your racing. So this regarding your full games, okay, this stands on strategy and discipline and work. The speed and the technique and the talent, if you want, and the luck has its place. You can see here, this is the luck in Spanish. This is the pyramid of success, and the talent and the luck has its place in the top of it. It's a very small place, but if you want to develop yourself, you might and you can work in the bottom of the pyramid. This is the part that is more important to me, and don't ask me why, but what I see after 33 years in snipe class alone is that most people work much more on this, like 90% of the time in speed or maybe speed and technique. They justify too much the success of others in their own lack of talent or the presence of talent in others, and they give too much place to this. People who win regattas, they don't count. They don't care about this. They don't care about this either. They had a reasonable technique. I hope I said it well. They try to have a competitive speed, not necessarily be the fastest around, but they have all this. They do all this. They never start the race without a strategy. They have discipline, okay, of doing what they know they have to do time after time, and they work trying to get the best race they have, that they can, okay? So this, looking the other way to make a short resume of this, we can say that if you try to see this as a glass of water with that represent the distance that separates you now from where you are ended up in the race to the position of the first place, in my view, the biggest part is a lack of strategy for racing, a bad start. Both happen before the start, and then you have, of course, a bad tactics because you don't have a strategy, and if you don't have strategy, there's no way you can have a good tactic during the race. And the distance you lose in transitions, that is everything from rounding a mark, make 720 or whatever, and then you can have a lack of speed if you want and some bad luck, but probably the bad luck is happening because you are making desperate moves and they don't come up with the result you expect because the top of the race is making the opposite decision, and usually they will be more informed than you if you don't have a strategy or a very kind of good conception of what is happening in the day. So years ago, what I did was realizing that my racing was sustained in training, okay, training in the water, physical condition, setup, the quality of my equipment, the maintenance of my equipment, my tactic, and my strategy. And until 2008, 2009, when I started to change my sailing, my focus was very much in this percentage regarding all these 7 aspects of my sailing. And as you can see, my focus, probably many of you feel represented about this kind of percentage. I used to go out to the water and always try to pair with a friend and test speed, and I usually went to the gym more than 10 years ago. I did, and I tried to train as much as I could in the water. My equipment was the best I could buy, but it was not very good. My maintenance was zero. I used to change the things when they broke, so I lose many races. About that, my tactic, I pay attention to my tactics, but I didn't understood at the moment that my tactic was the result of a previous strategy. So my tactic was during the race, and because of that, it was a very poor tactic. So what I'm doing now, since I kind of have training in the water, I cannot train physically as much as I use. I can, but I'm not doing that. I'm not defending this, but I just not doing that. And I will cross also the setup because I care about the setup, but only in what refers to what I just told you. Okay, so I have a very basic setup that helps me to have an easily handling of the boat. It's a pretty powerful setup, more focused in the speed than in the pointing, and the pointing is the result of the speeding, and I work in the pointing part, and I concentrate the boat when in some moments in the racing I'm free to think about the speed, and this happens because my strategy and my tactics allows me that. Okay, so I wasn't able to work in these three parts, so I give them 0 now because I just cannot do this. I care much more emphasis. I care much more in my equipment. I really don't want to give any advantage in my equipment, so I really buy. I choose the equipment I want to have and I buy it. I wasn't able to do this, of course, when I was 20, but now that I'm 50, I can, not without a lot of effort and help, but from my family or from the TV Marine or North Sales or the people that help me. But it's very important to have a good boat, a good mast, and good sails, and also the correct clothes. It's very important to be comfortable in the boat. The maintenance is central. I know that many of you listen to this and say, "Yeah, I know, okay, but it's not that important." Yes, it is. I lose a lot of racing, important races, because of lack of maintenance, and I'm very proud about not losing any race in the last 10 years because anything didn't work as it should in my boat. So remember, there is two kind of boats. There are the boats that works perfect and the boats that are not working. There's nothing in the middle. The boats must work perfect. If something is wear out or if something is not going smooth in a block or lines are touching or I don't know, anything that doesn't give you the control and the handling you need must be changed. Sailing is not very easy. Racing is much more difficult. Racing a snipe is more difficult, still more hard. Racing a snipe in hard wind is really one of the hardest thing you can do in a sailboat. So the last thing you want to do is to be fighting with your own boat, the boat you paid for. So don't do that. Make the boat work for you and not you work for the boat and being fighting with it. But after all this that anybody can do, I concentrate more in my tactic and my strategy. So I concentrate now in that 5 points I just mentioned. I try to concentrate in what I can do in that 5 points in equal parts, and I keeping my setup as good as I can, my equipment perfect all the time, maintain all the time, and I try to work as much as I can in my tactic and strategy. But regarding these last 2 items, I need to realize that if I want to make a difference regarding other people, because this is all very nice, but I need to go and compete in the wars that you can see in Ilhabela, for example, the last one I went, and I need to go and compete with, I don't know, Brazilians that sail almost perfect. I usually find myself watching of them sailing. To them, the same with all the great sailors. We have great sailors in the class, so I usually watch them sail. They sail almost perfect, and I know I'm not able to sail that good, so I need to compensate and I need to do some things better, and I cannot have a better setup comparing to them because they sail much and they get to develop, and the equipment, all top sailors, they buy the best equipment, so I will not have a difference in equipment. I can work a little bit more in maintenance and have everything perfect, and some of them will not have the best maintenance in the equipment, because this is something I don't know why sailors don't like to do much. But for sure I can work more, and I can study more, and I can read more regarding tactic and strategy, and that not always, not every day, not every race, but most of the time can give me or might give me an advantage regarding the strategy and the preparation. And it did. And these last 10 years, when I sail much less than other years, Pietro mentioned my achievements in these last 10 years, the 9 nationals, between the Western Hemisphere and the World Championship. I'm not sure now, but I think like 8 top 5 between both. And prior to these 10 years, I had 23 years in Snipe with my best years, young, sailing all the time, and I have 0 of this. I won my first nationals in 2009, and I didn't have a top 5 in any of those big regattas ever. I won my South Americans in these last 10 years. I won my Odessur gold medal in these last 10 years, my 9 nationals, everything doing this. So I'm convinced. When I started this, I wasn't very convinced, like most of you probably are now, but I tried to do it. I did it because it was the only thing I could do, and it worked out. And the part of strategy and tactics paid off, not as much in the aspect of seeing what others cannot see. Not that much in that aspect. I think I'm aware of that, and I'm very eyes open in the racing, but mostly this worked for me in the way of being concentrating all the time and trying to manage the regatta and not make so many mistakes, and most of all, not converting mistakes in disasters, and trying to look forward and trying to concentrate. And if a day is good for me, I will push very hard on this day. And if a day is bad for me, maybe a windy day, my goal is different, and I need to be more average and being smart about it. And this is something that age will give you, the manage of this stressful situation, this being smart and being patient. This, at least in my case, this came only with age. So we need to understand that. I used to say in my courses, these two things, that in races, sailboat racing, regattas, it's not boats. Okay, you are competing against people who concentrate different. You know, so you can always be the guy who is more who has more concentration than everybody else. This is something that you decide to do. It doesn't matter how much do you know. You can decide to be concentrated all the time, and I can assure you that the power of this is infinite. I don't feel I can go and race against the world champion or anybody that is sailing every weekend and very well physical training, and I know that probably they are sailing better than me, but I for sure think that I can beat them in the race, and I know that I can have better concentration, and I will work in that as much as I can, and I will focus my game on that. And well, I have a mistake here in the wording, but in one sense, the classes we compete, they're very democratic. It's not like basketball or tennis, where the people with the best ranking always win, because you have 100 points, and at the end of the game, probably most of the time, the best ranked guy will win. No, in boats, sailboat racing, every race, the guy who makes the less mistakes who makes the best racing will win the race. It's a very democratic sport. So try to, well, this thing in Italian, try to focus on that, okay? I'm going very fast because today was supposed to be a shorter presentation than the other day, so I'm cutting some sections. So you need to understand that races are not won. I mean, you need to, in my view, you need to, I don't know the word in English, to unlearn things that you know in order to change your way of thinking. In my view, the races are not won. Okay, the races are lost by the people who don't won the races, and it's not the same. It sounds maybe in English, not my mother tongue, so maybe it doesn't sound as I pretend in Spanish, but it's not the same. Not winning is not the same as losing. You know what I mean? So it's okay if you don't win races. It's okay. You go, you prepare, you look, you try to make a strategy, your tactic, your effort, you concentrate everything, and after all, you don't win. Okay, I personally don't have a problem with that. The problem is if you lose. If you lose, it's because you are doing things that you know.
Hello, Luis.
Yes.
Luis.
Yes. Hello.
We cannot hear you, Luis.
Okay, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here. Okay.
Luis.
Yes.
And now I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
We had a problem for a few seconds.
Okay. Okay. Don't worry. So these two. Allow me. These two photographs you saw of a laser. One was me, winning South American Championship in laser, a class that I don't sail. I had a laser for 10 years and I sailed 3 regattas in laser, and that was me in the last race winning the Master South American Championship, and the other was me capsizing in the reach mark after trying to make a jibe in the laser with 20 knots. A maneuver I wasn't prepared at all to do, and I was lucky enough that my competition was OCS in the start, so I end up winning the regatta anyway. But in the water, I lose the regatta because not winning. I was losing because I lose the regatta because I wasn't. I didn't have to do that maneuver. So try to don't lose races and regatta. If you do not win, that's okay. Some people can win and some others will not win. But try not to lose the regatta of the race because something you do, and most important because you don't do something like preparing yourself and making a strategy. I know that many of you saying, okay, but I don't know how to make a strategy, a plan before the racing. Okay, I understand that. There's many things you can do for that. You can read, you can do courses, everything you want. But even if you have no idea how to prepare a race plan, I propose you that you go to the starting line the previous minute and try to watch the race course. And even if all that you see is water, okay, try to force yourself to a decision. I want to race like this side, the middle, oscillating winds or whatever. Try to have a plan and try to start according in a position that allows you, if you want to race in the right of the race course, there is no point on starting in the pin, even if the pin is very favored, okay, and the opposite, okay. So try to force yourself to a plan and try to do the plan. Remember, not having a plan is many times worse than having a bad plan. Okay, so remember that. Remember that you will commit a lot of mistakes. That will happen. There is not a people in the water that doesn't make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. Even the world champions, even the guy who won the race and the regatta for 100 meters, they made mistakes. The guy that wins is not the one that doesn't make mistakes. It's the one that makes less mistakes, but more important is the one that do not make these mistakes to become disasters. Okay, so you will not lose a race because of 1, 2, or 3 mistakes, but you will lose a race because of one disaster. In the same of the regatta, you will not lose a regatta for a couple of mistakes, or even maybe not, or even a disaster. You can discard that race. But if your racing is not disaster controlling racing, you will add up several disasters. There is no championship, there is no regatta that can hold 2 disasters. Even if you have 2 discards available in the regatta, if you have 2 disasters, most probably you will have another race. If you have 2 discards, probably is because you have 10 races in the regatta, and in addition to that 2 disasters you just made, in the other 8 races, you probably will not have a very good position in a couple of them, so you will ruin your entire regatta with that. So this will be very short. I don't want to take much more time of you. So bottom line, the system I use to stay competitive against all odds, this very dramatic title we put to this a few weeks ago, is try to develop and try to make extra effort in the things that we can do. And this has an extra power because most people that usually go sailing a lot and they're younger and they are able to sail a lot, they focus their improvement, they develop themselves around what they do in the water, which is good, is needed, and it will pay out to them, but probably it will not pay out that as much as developing yourself in strategical and tactical weapons and tools, not weapons, tools to go to the race course. And this is something that it doesn't depend of talent, okay? It doesn't depend of luck. It doesn't depend of speed. You don't have to train this much. You can learn these concepts first, and then you can use it and training and adapt them and develop them in the water. Of course, it's not that you read a book and next Saturday you know everything and you will be world champion. But these things can be learned in the same way you learn, I don't know, any profession you have, and you learn concept and things that if you are engineer or a doctor or a lawyer, every one of you have the different tools. Okay, this is the same thing. Tactical and strategical tools are the technical tools that you can learn sitting in your desk. And I focus much more on that. I try to make the less few mistakes I can, tactical and strategical. Of course, I do a lot of mistakes because of what I said a few minutes ago. You will make mistakes, but I'm sure I made less mistakes than most people. And I have also the view to understand that you need to be realistic about the conditions. There's no point in making a magic setup if I cannot handle the boat, and there is no point if trying to make desperate moves in the race to have a result when the conditions are not good for me the day. For example, when we have these wars in Ilhabela, after 3 days of very light wind, I don't remember perfectly, but we have three in the first 3 races. We have 3 positions in the top 5, and we were first in the regatta. And then the stronger wind part of the regatta took place, and I knew I wasn't going to win the regatta. And many people told me, "Oh, you thought you couldn't win because, and that's why you didn't win." No, it's not because of that. I didn't win because having 6-7 races with 18 knots is impossible for me to win a world championship against so many good sailors. But I finished 5th, and the way I finished 5th is in a fleet of 80 some boats is having the discipline to know that my sailing in that 18 knots, 20 knots condition, my sailing was up to or being in the 30s in the fleet. So my goal was to stay around the 15. So I have several positions around 15, 17, 13, around that, and that avoiding disasters. We were third we had a lucky third in a race, in a very windy race, but it was a lucky third. It was not due to the strategical decision. It was pretty lucky, but the discipline to say, okay, I cannot win this racing. There is no point in taking risk to go stream to one side and crossing fingers in order to win the race, risking everything, being exposed to a disaster in one side. I will probably win a race, but we were disciplined. We looked for a good average, and we had a very good 5th. I'm very proud. I'm much more proud of that 5th in the last wars than from the 2nd position I had in 2015. So this is what I'm proposing. This is the whole center of. I hope I explained my thinking when I go racing. And as Pietro explained in the introduction, try to start all this from the very important distinction, which is one thing is sailing, another is racing. Okay, the difference is one is an activity and the other is a sport, and one is focused in comfort, relax, and having fun, and the other one is having fun through effort and concentration. So it's really different, and this is how I see it. So thank you all for being here, and you can all contact me through
maybe someone has some question. I don't know regarding the preparation, or I check also on YouTube if we have some question there.
Okay.
A question. I have a question, Luis.
Okay.
Regarding that, you said that you don't have a lot of time for racing. Usually, when you arrive on the race venue, and how do you prepare the regatta? For example, a main championship like an Argentinian national, or I don't know, a South Americans.
Well, it all depends on which boat I will use. If I go to the nationals, most probably I will go with my boat. So this last national, it was a very particular one. I wasn't able to attend much in advance because we are in pandemic, and I was allowed to travel for a week. But I arrived 2 days in advance. But for example, I had my boat here in my house, and what I did is, because I usually arrive, and you put your boat upside down, and you clean your boat, and you polish your boat, and you work a little bit on your boat when you are in the venue. I don't do that. I never do that. I do that. I have my boat in my house, and what I do is I do all this here. I even polish my boat here. I have a canvas to my boat looks like a candy when it travels. So when I take out the boat from the trailer, it's ready to sail. I do absolutely nothing in the site. So I try to arrive 1 or 2 days before, but usually the day before the racing, I never sail. And this is what I did in the last national. I sailed one day. I had a very, as I told you, it was a very different one because in this last national, this was a couple of months ago, I wasn't sailing for the whole previous year. I was like 12 months without stepping on the boat. So I really needed to, I don't know, getting used to the feeling a little bit of the boat. So I sailed one day, very long day with Diego. It was a 6-hour sailing alone. I didn't want to test speed with anybody else. The only thing I did that 6 hours were, since this was a site, I sailed before, but I didn't remember how it was. I tried to understand as much as I can the condition of the site for a day. And the next day I didn't sail. And the same for Ilabella, the World Championship. I arrived the day before with my own boat. It was carried it was carried by car. I arrived by plane, and I sailed the day before in Ilabella, but I sailed only in front of the club, and I sailed only like half an hour or 40 minutes, and only because I got a new centerboard, and I wanted to check if it vibrates or not, or if there was any trouble. So I didn't sail much in advance because, but I recommend, if I can recommend, for the Worlds in Talamone, I arrived 1 week in advance. But I arrived like this because I rented a boat, and the boat was most of the time is not as you want it. So I was 2 full days working on the boat and changing rigging, polishing, and then I sailed in Talamone a couple of days, and then I rest a couple of days, and then we have the Worlds. It depends. For example, if I go to the Europeans or the Western this year, for sure I will rent the boat, and I'm pretty sure I will try to arrive maybe 3 days or 4 if I can in advance, so I can work in it. It all depends of the kind of equipment I will use, and it also depends in if I know the venue or not. You know, I don't have any problem in arrive the day before to a venue I know. Okay.
Okay, perfect. Here we have a comment from Shu. She suggests you to leave your profession of engineer and being a psychiatrist.
Yes, I could do that. No, really, these whole things sound very psychiatric, but it's not. If you think about it, it's pure logic. It's what can you do, and the things that you can explode, the more always are the thing where everybody else is not working much. And if you try to close your eyes and think about your own safety when you go sailing, most probably you will go out and pair with another boat and start testing speed. And that is what 90% of the people do 90% of the time. And you, Pietro, are in this class as much as I am, if not more. And you know how even our boats are. So in my view, there's no much point in spending all that time with speed when you already have a very good competitive speed. You need to be exploiting other tools. And that is why I'm focusing more on all this.
Okay, if we don't have any question from our viewers, I think we can say thank you to Luis. It was very interesting, your lecture, and useful, I think, for everybody. Because sailing or racing is a challenge, because usually we don't have so much time and we are getting older, and so these are very good suggestions. Thank you, Luis.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Okay, bye-bye to everybody. Talk soon for another lecture. We will think about another one.
Okay, bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.